I, I don't know how I never read these books. I'd never even heard of them. It's funny because my moderator, Snail, Spectral Bovine, had mentioned that these were in the Scholastic Book Fair. I love those things. I order books from them all the time. How did I never see these or anything? I don't understand. Actually, it's probably because I was mostly getting Goosebumps or Judy Blume books. I loved Judy Blume growing up. Not that I hate Judy Blume now, but anyway. This is for Ryan. This is chapter 6 of Searching for Dragons. It's called In Which Mendenbar and Cimmerian Have a Long Talk, and Mendenbar reluctantly decides to embark on a journey. Oh boy. Mendenbar took a deep breath. I think you'd better tell me everything you know about this, he said. When did Kazul leave? Where was she going? She left last Monday, Cimmerian replied readily. She was going to visit her grandchildren in the northern part of the mountains. She does that whenever she gets a chance, and sometimes she stays a few extra days, but she's always sent word when she's done that. She frowned worriedly. Grandchildren? Cimmerian smiled. I know. I was taken aback when I found out about them, too. You just don't think of the King of the Dragons as a doting grandmother, but she is. In fact, I suspect she took longer than she had to about the negotiations with the frost giants up there, just so she'd have an excuse to stay a few days. Anyway, she was planning to spend a couple of days with them and then swing through the enchanted forest on her way home. She was coming to see me? Mendenbar asked, surprised. Not exactly. Cimmerian hesitated. We'd heard that someone was growing dragonsbane in one of the valleys along the border, and she wanted to see whether it was true. You can see why I'm worried. Growing dragonsbane, you mean deliberately planting it? There've always been a few patches of the stuff here and there. The way we heard it, this was an entire valley full. It's hardly accidental. Cimmerian lifted the lid of the teapot and peered inside, then poured a cup for each of them. Kazul wanted to check for herself, quietly, before any of the younger dragons heard about it. Some of them are impulsive. She didn't want someone tearing off in a fury to burn down the enchanted forest with no more reason than a rumor. Oh, God. Oh, Lord. Actually, that's what Mendenbar says. Oh, Lord. Mendenbar pushed his hair backward off his forehead and grimaced at his tea. I'll bet that's what's happened. I wish she'd sent word to me. Cimmerian studied her cup with unnecessary thoroughness. She was afraid you might be the one doing it. Me? The king of the enchanted forest. You haven't been particularly friendly since she took over, you know. She frowned suddenly. Why did you turn up today, anyway? And what did you mean that's what happened? Don't tell me somebody has already started setting fire to the enchanted forest. Almost, Mendenbar said. He explained about the dead area and the dragon scales he had found. Morwen said that they were all from the same dragon, but they had been enchanted to look as if they came from several different dragons. I was hoping King Kazul would tell me which dragon they belonged to, and maybe let me ask him a few questions. You mean her? Her a few questions. Let me look at them, Cimmerian said. Mendenbar took the scales out of his pocket and spread them out on the table. Cimmerian made a face. I can tell you whose scale... Oh, boy. Whose scales they were all right, but I'm afraid it won't help much. Oh, shit! Warog isn't around anymore. That's a start, Mendenbar said. You sure these are his? Very sure, but I'm afraid you won't be able to ask him any questions. Cimmerian smiled as if it was some private joke. Why not? Because the reason Warog isn't around anymore is that he got turned into a toad about a year ago. Do you know how the King of the Dragons is chosen? By test, Mendenbar replied, a little puzzled by the question. When a king dies, the crown goes to whichever dragon can carry Colin Stone from the Ford of Whispering Snakes to the Vanishing Mountain. Well, yes. Well, Warog poisoned the old king of the dragons. Then he arranged with the Society of Wizards to rig the test so he'd be the next king, Cimmerian said, matter-of-factly. It was mostly luck that we found out in time to stop them. When we did, Warog turned into a toad because of his undragon-like behavior. She sipped at her tea. I think a snake ate him, she added thoughtfully. There were so many things Mendenbar wanted to say in response to this disturbing summary that for a moment he couldn't say anything at all. He took a large swallow of tea, which gave him an extra minute to think. Is that why the wizards have been banned from the Mountains of Mourning? He managed at last. Of course, Cimmerian answered. Kazul couldn't do anything more. Even though we knew it was all their idea, it was Warog who actually poisoned the king. Didn't Morwen tell you about it? She was there. No, Mendenbar said. It didn't come up. He shook his head. No wonder Zeminar didn't want to talk about why the dragons don't want wizards in the mountains anymore. Cimmerian nodded. The wizards don't talk about it because their scheme didn't work out, and the dragons don't talk about it because the wizards came so close that the dragons are embarrassed to admit it, and Morwen is too discreet to spread the story around when the dragons would rather she didn't. That's actually very fast. That's a very believable explanation. I see. Mendenbar saw considerably more than that. The disagreement between the dragons and the Society of Wizards was not a minor matter, as Zeminar had led him to believe. As Kazul's princess, or rather chief cook and librarian, he reminded himself, was nothing like the sneaky, manipulative girl Zeminar had hinted she was either. It looked very much as if Zeminar had been deliberately trying to cause trouble between Mendenbar and the dragons, or at least get Mendenbar off to a bad start with their king. He wondered what Zeminar would have said about Morwen if her name had come up. It wouldn't surprise me if the Society of Wizards was behind this too, Cimarine said, waving her hand at the scales. It's exactly the kind of twisty scheme that they'd come up with. It's possible, Mendenbar acknowledged, but why would they want to bring the enchanted forest into their argument with the dragons? Maybe they think you'll clean the dragons out of the mountains, or at least reduce their numbers enough so that the wizards will be able to come through without getting eaten. Mendenbar shook his head. If it came to a fight, the enchanted forest and the mountains of morning would be very evenly matched. A war would cut the wizards off from both places, as long as there was any fighting, and it would probably drag on for ages. Seminar must know that. He'd have to have an awfully good reason to start something like that. Maybe he does. Maybe, but I can't think of what it could be. Can you? No, Cimarine admitted, but if I figure it out, I'll let you know. Meanwhile, is there anyone else who would have done this? Mendenbar asked, waving at the line of scales on the table. There aren't many people who can get a hold of even one dragon scale, much less 5 from the same dragon. Warog's princess might have kept 1 or 2 as a souvenir, but I don't think she'd have this many, and anyway, she doesn't know any magic. Suddenly she looked up. Wait a minute. When Warog turned into a toad, a whole batch of scales fell off and scattered. What happened to them? We just left them at the fort, Simeon said with a shrug. Nobody thought it was important. Most of them are probably still there. Dragon scales last a long time. At the fort of Whispering Snakes? Mendenbar asked. Cimarine nodded. And he grimaced. Then anyone who walked by could have picked up these scales any time in the past year. That doesn't narrow things down much. I'm as sorry about that as you are, Cimarine said. Mendenbar's face must have shown his surprise because she gave him an exasperated look and went on. Hadn't it occurred to you that we'd want to know who's plotting to get dragons blamed for their mischief, especially if it turns out not to be the Society of Wizards? But, oh, if it's not the Society, then you have a new enemy you don't know anything about. Damn it. Cimarine nodded again, very soberly. I just wish I had time to look into it right now, but with Kazul missing, it will have to wait. You'll let me know when she gets back? I'll tell Roxine to send word if she shows up while I'm gone, Cimarine assured him. And if I find her first, I'll tell her everything you've told me. I'm sure she'll get in touch with you right away. Thank you. Now, is there anything else you want to know? Because if there isn't, I need to be going, Cimarine went on. It's a long walk to Flat Top Mountain, and I'd like to get there before dark. Surely you don't plan to walk all the way to the northern end of the mountains of morning. He was surprised and suddenly disappointed by this evidence of princess-like behavior. From their brief acquaintance, he thought Cimarine had better sense. You need to stop prejudging her. She's continually proved you wrong. Of course not, Cimarine replied impatiently. I'm not stupid. I'm gonna borrow a magic carpet from Balamor, the giantess, who lives on Flat Top Mountain. What? Mendenbar choked on the last of his tea. Do you expect a giantess to loan you a carpet just because you have a dragon with you? He demanded when he could talk again. I'd better not, since I won't have a dragon with me, Cimarine retorted. Not that it's any of your business. You're going to wander around the mountains of morning, alone, looking for King Kazul, Mendenbar said, appalled. Exactly. And if I can't find her there, I'll swing through the enchanted forest on the way back, just the way she was planning to. And it's time I got started, so if you just... Oh, no. Mendenbar set his teacup down, so emphatically that it rattled the saucer. If you're fool enough to travel through the mountains of morning without a companion, that's not my concern, but you are not going through the enchanted forest alone. It's too dangerous. I can take care of myself, Cimarine snapped. You forget I've been living with dragons for over a year. Maybe so, Mendenbar said, trying hard to hold on to his temper, but the enchanted forest is very different from the mountains of morning. What do you suppose will happen if the king of the dragon's princess, or cook, or librarian, or whatever, gets captured, or killed, or enchanted going through my forest? Cimarine opened her mouth to reply and then paused. Oh, she said in a very different tone. Oh, I see. That would cause just the sort of trouble we're both trying to avoid, wouldn't it? I'm sorry, I'm used to people objecting to things because they think I can't do them or shouldn't do them. It didn't occur to me that you might have a real reason. Then you won't go? Mendenbar said with relief. I have to, Cimarine said in tones of one explaining something obvious. It's my job. Besides, Kazul is my friend. I'll just have to make sure I don't get captured or killed or enchanted. That's all. It's not as easy as you make it sound. I know, I visited Morwen a time or two, Cimarine said. I'll manage, one way or another. Mendenbar started to object again, then stopped. He didn't think Cimarine was quite as sure of herself as she sounded, but she was plainly determined to go hunting for Kazul. Well, she was right about one thing. Somebody had to find the king of the dragons, and soon. Mendenbar didn't like to think of what might happen if Kazul stayed missing for so long, especially if rumors about Dragonsbane and the Enchanted Forest started floating around the mountains. Is there anyone you could take with you? Mendenbar asked. No, Simran said. Roxime and Marchak are the only dragons who have enough sense not to go off in flits when they hear that Kazul is missing. Roxime is too old for adventures, and Marchak has to stay and take care of business while I'm gone. And I hope you're not going to suggest I borrow Marchak's princess. I wouldn't dream of it, Mendenbar said sincerely. Is she very awful? Actually, she's one of the nice ones, Simran admitted, but she's very silly. She'd try, but she wouldn't enjoy it at all, and she'd be much more of a nuisance than she's worth. I'd rather take my chances alone. That's almost as bad an idea as taking the princess along, Mendenbar said. He sighed. I suppose I'll have to come with you myself. Simran stared at him blankly for a moment, and then began to giggle. It isn't funny, Mendenbar said. I mean it. He felt a little hurt by Simran's reaction. He wasn't necessarily stuffy or useless or a nuisance to travel with, just because he was king of the Enchanted Forest. Simran ought to realize that. After all, he'd fixed the sink for her, hadn't he? I know you mean it, Simran said when she could talk again. It wasn't what you said, it was the way you said it. She shook her head, chuckling. You sound about as eager to come with me as I am to have company, which isn't much. Maybe not, but somebody... What was that? Simran interrupted, holding up a hand for silence. I didn't hear anything, Mendenbar said. Shh, Simran hissed. She rose and tiptoed to the door, listening. In the quiet, Mendenbar heard a faint thud outside. Simran's lips tightened. Princes or wizards, she muttered. Wizards, I'll bet. Princes are noisier. Still frowning, she picked up the bucket of soapy water that was sitting beside the door. As she reached for the doorknob, Mendenbar started after her. Simran hadn't asked for his help, but a bucket of soapy water wasn't much of a weapon against a wizard. If it was a wizard. Also, you have no idea what you're talking about. I love how she sets it up, though, like he does mean well, but that doesn't mean he's actually helping. Or he actually knows what he's talking about, I should say. The corridor outside the kitchen was pitch black. Simran vanished into the gloom, moving with the calm sureness of long familiarity. Cursing mentally, Mendenbar picked his way after her, one hand on the cave wall for guidance, the other stretched out in front of him to keep from running into anything. Another muffled crash echoed from up ahead. Mendenbar took 2 more steps, and his outstretched arm touched Simran's shoulder. A moment later, Simran's voice calmly said, Phrasal Spitz. What? What? Mendenbar felt magic rise around him. Light flared from the walls and settled into a steady glow, revealing an enormous cavern. He and Simran stood in one of 5 dark openings spaced unevenly around the wall. Halfway across the cave, a tall man in blue and brown wizard's robes stood hanging onto a staff and trying to squint in all directions at once. His hair and beard were brown, and he bore a strong resemblance to Zeminar, only younger. Oh, God! You again? Antrell, Cimmerian said in tones of disgust. I might have guessed. Glad to see you again, Princess Cimmerian, the wizard said in an oily tone, but who could fail to rejoice at the sight of so lovely a princess? What are you doing here? Cimmerian demanded. Mendenbar was pleased to know that she didn't sound at all mollified by Antrell's flattery. And how did you get in without being eaten? Oh, we wizards have our little ways, Antrell said airily. I came because I was concerned about you, Princess. I'll bet, Cimmerian muttered. What do you mean? She said in a louder voice. I thought you might need a friend. Antrell's voice oozed sincerity, especially after what Father said when he came back from the Enchanted Forest. If King Mendenbar really is getting for a war with the dragons, where did your father get that idea? Simran asked in tones of mild interest. Antrell frowned slightly, as if he'd hoped for a stronger reaction. Something the king said to him. I think I shouldn't have repeated it, I suppose, but I was carried away by my feelings. Sure you were, Simran said. That's why you sneaked in here without knocking and went blundering around in the dark instead of calling me or at least bringing a lamp. I didn't want to disturb King Kazul if she happened to be here, Antrell said stiffly. Simran snorted. If you really thought Kazul was here, you wouldn't have come at all. She doesn't like it when people ignore her rules, one of which, may I remind you, is that wizards aren't allowed in the Mountains of Morning anymore. But if there is going to be a war, there isn't, Mendenbar said, stepping forward into the light. Yes, that's great. Oh, shit. At least not if I can help it. Why are you people trying so hard to make trouble anyway? Antrell's eyes widened and he sucked in his breath. Mendenbar? You'll ruin everything, blast you. He smiled a sudden nasty smile. Unless I deal with both of you now. Oh, yes, that will do very well. Father will be so pleased. He raised his staff. Mendenbar started toward him, pulling his sword free as he ran, though he knew the wizard was much too far away to reach before he finished the spell. Cimmerian followed quickly, not quite running, carrying a bucket carefully to avoid spilling. They'd only gone a few steps when a swirl of smoke appeared in the air in front of them. The smoke thickened rapidly, then congealed with shocking suddenness into the largest nightshade Mendenbar had ever seen. It was 2 feet taller than Mendenbar and covered with spikes of coarse black fur. Its beady black eyes stared at him as it raised a long arm and clicked its dark purple claws together. It hissed, showing a mouthful of fangs. There, cried Aunt Terrell over the nightshade's noise. Vanquish that, simmering, if you can. Oh, she will. She will do it. This book is great. I didn't know you could make it better than the last one, but this is great.